We're live. Mid-drink, we are live. Here on the Panther-Lair show. On a Saturday night, Pitt post-game reaction. And, you know, it's an interesting thing that tends to happen. I've done a lot of the drive home podcasts where I'll walk out of the stadium and turn on my phone and start talking to the voice recorder and record my thoughts on the way home from the game and just kind of talk, stream of consciousness, you know, whatever thoughts come into mind, reactions to the game, observations, things that stood out, what have you. I mean, you know, it's totally off the cuff, but just kind of whatever comes to mind over the course of the drive home. And I just drove home from Heinz Field. I mean, I literally just got home a few minutes ago, and I'm back here at the Panther-Lair studios. And as I was driving home, didn't have a lot of things, didn't have a lot that popped into my head. I mean, I don't know what I would have said on a drive home podcast. I don't know what I would have talked about, but it occurred to me as I was driving home that if I'm going to do a post-game reaction podcast, I better think of something. And so here we are, the Panther-Lair live stream podcast. Got a lot of people filing in. We appreciate everybody who's showing up in the live stream here tonight at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We're going to get to all your comments and all your questions. Of course, you see that option down there in the chat where you can be a super chatter and make sure your comments get seen and your questions get answered. If you're a super chatter, look, I'm going to try and get to everybody's comments and everybody's questions. You do the super chat option. We will make sure we get to what you get to your comment and your question and your reaction to this game as Pitt loses to Notre Dame 45-3. And I feel like, I mean, there's a lot of places you can go. There's a lot of places you can go in the aftermath of a game like that. And there's a lot of places we're going to go tonight. We'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. And we'll talk as long as you want to talk. You know, and if you're listening to the podcast later in the week, well, you should have tuned in on Saturday night and gotten in on the conversation. We'll do this after every game because we're going to have things to talk about. Whatever direction this team goes, whatever direction this program goes, we're going to have a lot to talk about over the course of the next 4 games now. And maybe you start there. Maybe you start there with the stark, harsh, and cold reality of the fact that this Pitt football team in 2020 has now played 7 games. They have played 7 games on an 11-game schedule. You've already passed the halfway point. You are now well into the second half of the season. And you are 3-4. And you have a 4-game losing streak. And all the promise, all the hope, all the potential has been squandered. It's gone. No one believes in you anymore. No one thinks you're going to win any more games. I mean, over the last couple of weeks, there have been posts on the message board and tweets, and I've gotten direct messages or text messages. I don't know how many more games they're going to win. I don't know if they're going to win. They might not win 2 more games. They might not win this. They might not win that. And I got texts today after the game and during the games. They're not going to win another game. This is what people are saying to me. And with every game, with every quarter, with every blown coverage and bad penalty and offensive miscue and every running play, it gets harder and harder to turn away that thought of what the final 4 games might hold. Florida State, Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, these all look like beatable opponents. These all look like opponents that an average team or slightly above average team should have a pretty good chance of beating. They don't look very good. Florida State doesn't look very good. Georgia Tech doesn't look very good. Virginia Tech doesn't look very good. An average team or an above average team should beat them. And while I'm going to have to do some serious searching over the next week to try and figure out whether I think this is an average team or an above average team, just purely on the basis of talent, it is undeniable that they are playing well below average. They are playing mediocre football right now and have been for the past 4 weeks. And maybe you could say that they've been playing mediocre football for the past 6 weeks. And they managed to get away with it the first 2 of those 6 weeks. And in the last 4, they have not been able to. But this wasn't the same thing, though. This wasn't the same thing. This Notre Dame game was not losing to Boston College on a missed extra point in overtime. This was not losing to NC State when you drop a 2-point conversion, you had the lead in the final couple of minutes and all that kind of thing. This wasn't even the Miami game where, well, you lost by 12, but you had 5 trips to the red zone. You only scored 1 touchdown out of those trips. You settled for field goals the rest of the time. You played really good defense. This wasn't those games. This, I mean, what can you call this? It's after dark, right? What can you call this but an ass kicking? I mean, and I don't say that to be crass. I don't say that to be funny. I don't say that to, boy, I'm going to really be edgy and get you. I mean, if you've listened to this podcast before, if you've read if you've read things that I've written on Panther-Lair.com, you've watched these live streams, it's not what I do. I'm not trying to be, hard edge, shock jock type of thing. That's not my game. I tried that a long time ago. And it didn't fit, and I said, "This is stupid. I'm not going to act like that. That's not who I am. It's not how I think. I'm not going to try and take pot shots at coaches or players or teams just to be funny or get a reaction or be the hard, edgy guy who's going to say things that nobody else wants to say. No, but when you go out and lose 45-3, when you are a Power 5 program and you get treated like an FCS team on your home field." I don't know what else you call it. Because this wasn't like NC State and Boston College and Miami. This wasn't like the games last year, those disappointing losses of the Miami and the Boston College losses. Or the 1 touchdown loss to Penn State or Virginia where you just gave them the ball a bunch of times and they had short fields. This was something else. This was something we haven't seen in a while. This was something, quite frankly, that you start talking about as not just being the worst loss of the season. You start talking about that as being, this game as being the worst loss of the Narduzzi era. Hope everyone has a drink. You guys got drinks? I got the Oryx Pumpkin Ale. Outstanding. I went and picked up more of them because they were out. They got them back in. It's a great pumpkin beer. Hopefully you've got something you're drinking tonight. And before we get into comments and questions, we'll get there in a second. I've got a visual aid. Because much like we did after the NC State game, I thought, I think I need the whiteboard. And so what I have here, my friends, on the whiteboard is, by points, the worst losses of the Pat Narduzzi era. And you can see I've got them ranked. And I've got my eraser. And so I've got them ranked in terms of the point totals. Just how much did Pitt lose by? These were the 5 biggest losses in the Narduzzi era. Okay? Now Pitt, of course, against Notre Dame, lost by 42 points. So let's circle that number. Let's write this on here. 42. Okay. That's our target number. A little Jackie Robinson action for you. And so let's bring out our whiteboard, shall we? Okay. 2019, Virginia Tech, 28-0. 28 minus 0, 28 points. Nope, that's not as bad as this. 2018 UCF, 45-14, 31 points. Nope. Cross that one off. That one's not as bad as this. 2018 ACC championship game. Your Coastal Division champions lose to Clemson 42-10. 42 minus 10 is 32. That's not good, but it's better than this. Ooh, 2017 Oklahoma State. One of the worst games I've seen Pitt play in a long time. And I've covered Pitt since the first year of the Dave Wanstead era. I've seen some dogs. Pitt got destroyed. Now, again, I apologize for the language, but you talk about ass kickings. 2017 Oklahoma State, 59-21. And yet, 59 minus 21 is still only 38. Cross that one off. We have one game that stands as worse than this. Penn State, 2018, 51-6, a 45-point loss. And now, we can add 2020. Notre Dame, 45-3. That's the level we're on right now. And I think that, I always try to avoid getting involved in hyperbole and, immediately after a game, you don't want to overreact. You don't want to see one good pass and say this guy's the best thrower in the history of college football. You don't want to see one bad pass and say this guy's the worst quarterback the game has ever seen. Try to take a longer view. Try to take a big picture view. Try not to get too caught up in the moment. But, brother, they just lost by 42 points at home for a fourth loss in the row against a Power 5 opponent in a season that was supposed to be a really good one, was supposed to be the best team that this coaching staff has had over the course of the last 6 seasons. And they got sent home with a 42-point loss. This is the worst loss of the Narduzzi era. This is worse than the 51-6 game. And the 51-6 game was, don't get me wrong, it was a miserable experience, start to finish. It was a downpour that night. It was a night game. Nothing was going well. Pitt had a botched snap on their only touchdown. At least they scored a touchdown in that game. This game, they couldn't get closer than the 20. No. Wait, where did they get? The Notre Dame 27. They couldn't get closer to the end zone than the Notre Dame 27. They had one drive that got 37 yards, one drive that got 43 yards, and nothing else got more than 28. They couldn't move the ball to save their lives. They couldn't score a touchdown to save their lives. And they just got blown out of the water for the worst loss of the Narduzzi era. And I think there are a lot of things that are troubling about that. One is the fact that the worst loss of the Narduzzi era has come in year 6, when ostensibly he had his best team. And a lot of people have thought about, and one thing I'm really going to think about this week, I'm going to write about and look into and really try to quantify, is the impact of the losses, of the lost personnel, whether it's a Jalen Twyman or it's a Damari Mathis or then Kenny Pickett missing a couple of games, and try to quantify how much losing those guys actually hurt. But it still was supposed to be a really talented roster, supposed to be a roster that could go out and compete. And so maybe a game like Notre Dame was going to be a difficult one to win. And we said that at the beginning of the season when we broke it down and said, look, there's 2 games at this end of the spectrum that are going to be really difficult to win, and it's Notre Dame and Clemson. And so it was always going to be a challenge. But that doesn't mean you need to go out and get blown out by 42 points. So you've got the 6th year of a coaching staff, presumably the best team that this staff has had. And here they are, not just losing 4 games in a row, which is troubling enough, which is enough of a red flag. You don't need more than that. But they cap it off with a 45-3 loss at home. Playing the number 3 team in the country. Notre Dame's really talented. Doesn't mean you need to get blown out by 42 points. You can lose to a talented team. You can lose to the number 3 team in the country. Those things are understandable. You don't want to say they're acceptable. You want to go out and win every game and all that. They're understandable. Not a 42-point blowout. And so it's concerning that you've got this possibly the worst loss in the era coming in year 6 when there really shouldn't be any reason that you're taking losses like this. And then you get a little bit more concerned when you start looking at 20-point losses and, games where Pitt has really gotten blown out. And you see that, under Pat Narduzzi, Pitt has lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games by 20 points or more since Narduzzi got to Pitt. None in 2015. Only one in 2016. They lost the Miami game 51-28. Down in Miami. That was, I think, the game before the Clemson game. So nobody thought they were going to beat Clemson, given how much they just gotten waxed by Miami. And then they had the one in 2017, the Oklahoma State game, which was really bad. 59-21, 38-point loss. That was brutal, right? But then you have 6 games since the start of the 2018 season where Pitt has lost by 20 points or more. 4 of those were in 2018. 1 was last year, and now 1 is this year. That's not a trend that you want to see going up over the course of a coaching tenure. That's not something you want to see increasing as a coach's time at a school grows on. Those should be early tenure losses, and you trend them down. But just like the bad losses, which we've talked about, how, the truly bad losses this program has suffered, that this team has suffered under Narduzzi, have really come in the last 2.5 seasons. Just like those have gone up in the second half of this 6-year period, so too have the 20-point losses gone up in the second half of this 6-year period. And that's concerning. And I think a lot of people are thinking big picture right now. And a lot of people are thinking about the long-term viability of this coaching staff and this head coach. And I can't litigate that right now. I can't go down that path. I mean, I have my thoughts. You have your thoughts. But it's hard to get around that. It's hard to get away from it. It's hard when you're looking at a 4-game losing streak that's capped with a 42-point loss that you're going to have to sit on and dwell on and stew over for the next 2 weeks because they're off this coming weekend. It's hard to not think big picture. It's hard to not ask those questions. It really is. All right, I want to get into the conversations here and get some questions from you guys, see what you guys are thinking about tonight. And the questions started rolling in as soon as we started the live stream. So we got the super chatters. I appreciate everybody who's jumping in the super chat. Let's see who we got here. RJC Man, of course, jumping in with the super chat comment. Joe Lanzel says, "Please read my first post." I got to find it, Joe. We will get through. We'll get through them all. I will get to what you have to say. Let's start. S. Mac has a question. Where was Izzy? Izzy Benakanda, was back for this game. He was healthy for this game. He was available for this game. He played in this game very late in the game. And I don't know why he didn't play earlier. I don't know why he wasn't out there until very late in the game. He ended up with 2 carries for a net gain of 0 yards. And then looked like he got hurt at the end. He was hurt earlier in the season. He got hurt. I forget which game. I guess he got hurt in the week prior to the Miami game. So he didn't make the trip to Miami and then didn't play. I don't even know what to say about the personnel at running back. I mean, running back, the personnel decisions didn't make a lot of sense. Daniel Carter gets 1 carry. I mean, what were you getting out of Vincent Davis and A.J. Davis? A.J. Davis has 3 carries for a net gain of 1 yard. Vincent Davis has 8 carries for 28 yards, which is better than his 9 carries for 0 yards last week at Miami. But, I mean, Daniel Carter, 1 carry for 9 yards. He was on the field for a handful of snaps, but hand the ball to him. Now, and maybe it wouldn't make a difference because you're not getting any good run blocking anyway, but, hand the ball to him. Give him a chance to run some plays. And Izzy Benakanda as well. If he wasn't healthy, then don't dress him. If he wasn't healthy, don't put him in at the end of the game. If he can't pass block, don't play him. But instead, they put him out there, and looks like he might have gotten hurt. All right. Travis Spagnolo says, I have a feeling the no absences from COVID streak will end after this. This season is going south in a hurry. These players are going to start going out and enjoying college again. It's over. I mean, I don't know. You might be right, Travis. I don't know what's going to happen there. I mean, good on Pitt for going, the last 5 weeks without any players absent due to COVID-related protocol. I mean, good for them. That's certainly something that you could hang your hat on. It's one of the few things right now that this program and this team can hang its hat on. Joe Lanzel says, the only solution for Heather Lyke, fire Mark Whipple, find an offensive coordinator who's a head coach in waiting, force Narduzzi to the press box like Paterno at 80. Narduzzi, once again, deer in headlights, out-coached. The thing, well, let's see. I mean, you touched on a few different areas there. I don't think they're going to hire a head coach in waiting and make Pat Narduzzi go to the press box. If you are going to change head coaches, they will change head coaches and make the change and make it abruptly. As to the matter of the offensive coordinator, because I think we're going to have a lot of comments about this. We're going to have a lot of conversation about this. Look, I avoid saying people should get fired. I wouldn't want someone to say that about me. I realize it's part of the deal. that you're going to opine on these things. I'm not going to sit down here and say Mark Whipple should be fired or Dave Borbley should be fired or Pat Narduzzi or anybody like that. What I do is what I did in Sean Watson's second year. Is what I did in Matt Cavanaugh's 5, 6, 7, 8, fourth year. Look at the product. Okay, look at the product. Look at the results. And when you look at the results, and you've got 20 games now with Mark Whipple as the offensive coordinator, and Pitt's offense, not any good. It's not better than it was in 2018. They throw the ball more, which produces more volume statistics, but they're not necessarily more effective at it. They're not necessarily more efficient at it. In a lot of ways, their passing game is less effective and less efficient than it was in 2018 when they ran the ball all the time. And it's not hard to figure out. I don't think I need to sit here and slam my fist on the table and say Mark Whipple should be fired. What I will say instead is this. I saw the offensive performance that got Sean Watson fired. And when I look at the last 20 games, the offense hasn't been any better than it was in 2018. So if that offense got Sean Watson fired, I don't know. It seems to me that it wouldn't be much of a stretch for Pat Narduzzi to reach the same conclusion with his current offensive coordinator. The interesting thing, and this is what's interesting to me, and this is just me sitting here on a Saturday night, having a beer, talking into a microphone, getting hypothetical about this. But what's interesting to me is that we're sitting here on the verge of an off week. There's 2 whole weeks, and you can't go out on the road recruiting. These guys are going to be in the office for 2 weeks. I don't know what the desperation level is in the South Side right now. I don't know what Pat Narduzzi's desperation level is. But if there were a time to make a change with who's calling the plays on offense, you've got 2 weeks. You're not going out on the road recruiting. If there was a time to do it, and if you were desperate to make a move, if you were desperate for something to change with this offense, this would be the time to do it. Now, I don't know if it's going to happen. Gut instinct, you put a gun to my head, I say, no, Pat Narduzzi's not going to change offensive coordinators mid-season. He might do it after the season, but he's not going to do it mid-season. But if you were going to, if he was inclined to consider such a possibility, if he was desperate to consider for anything, if he was desperate to find a spark to make the offense work better, and his solution was to look for a new coordinator, now will be the time to do it. RJ Seaman38 says, I'd fire Heather Lyke and hire Jim Tressel. That's a great comment. I appreciate you saying that. That's not going to happen, so let's move on. Josh Newark says, today was the same story. Can't run, drops, the defense gave up big plays, double-digit penalties, coaches outclassed, players outplayed, not a single positive. And listen, brother, I'm right there with you. And you guys, if you've listened to this podcast before, you watch the live streams, you read the things I read on Panther-Lair.com, you listen to the Panthers Insider Show. If you've heard me or experienced my thoughts on Pitt at some point over the last 15 years, you know that I usually find something positive. And it's not necessarily because I'm a particularly positive guy. I'm very cynical about a lot of things in life, particularly in this year of our Lord 2020. But it's just kind of what I do. Particularly if everybody is going negative, I'll try and find something. In this week's 3-2-1 column on Panther-Lair.com, I wrote about 5 things that stood out to me as being positive about this team as it's currently constructed and the way it is, how it looks moving forward. And as I sit here on Saturday night having a beer, talking into this microphone, I can't find you one positive from this game. Let's look down the stat sheet. Running backs did nothing. Quarterbacks did nothing. Joey Yellen threw 3 interceptions. Nick Patty was 2 of 5 for 17 yards. Davis Bevel got 1 freaking series. And even if he had a nice scramble for a first down, and Davis Bevel did, he had a 10-yard run for a first down, he only played like 1 series. So even the slightest positive that exists in Davis Bevel's performance, and there wasn't much to grasp onto, becomes a negative when you wonder what the heck is going on. Why is he out and now Nick Patty's in to finish the game? Not that there's something wrong with Nick Patty playing, but why isn't Davis Bevel getting a shot? Why isn't he getting a look to see what he can do? So the running backs, no positives. The quarterbacks, no positives. The wide receivers, Jordan Addison had 3 catches for 40 yards. The offense as a whole stunk, so there's not going to be anything you'll find there. Kirk Christodoulou averaged less than 40 yards per punt. He did put 4 of his 7 punts inside the 20 and didn't have any touchbacks, so that's nice. He also had a punt that was blocked and returned for a touchdown. Alex Kessman made a 45-yard field goal. There's your positive, man. Josh Newark, there's your positive. Alex Kessman, I'm reading through the box score, and I finally found something. Alex Kessman attempted 1 field goal and made it. But you know what? That even brings up a question of why they're punting from their own 30 or from the Notre Dame 37 instead of trying to kick a field goal or even just going for it. I think it was a 4th and 7 or something like that. So even Kessman doesn't make it all that positive. Looking at the defensive box score, I mean, it's hard when you gave up 45 points to find anything positive in the defense. Paris Ford and Brandon Hill both had 8 tackles. I think Hill played a lot on special teams. He played a lot on defense at the end of the game. Servassier Dennis had 7 tackles. 4 of them were tackles for loss. That's the second time this season he's had 4 tackles for loss in a game. So that's a positive. They had 2 sacks. Chase Pine and Phil Campbell had sacks. Not a lot of production out of the defensive ends. And really, I mean, we're looking at the defense, and I'm trying to find individual performances. The result, the reality is they gave up 430 yards, 319 passing yards, 115 rushing yards. They were actually pretty decent against the rush, 2.3 yards per carry. But overall, you gave up 45 points. Even if 7 of those came on a blocked punt, you still gave up 38 points on defense. You don't get to beat your chest about anything. You didn't do anything good. There are no positives from this game. Nothing. You really can't rationalize it. Brock Madonic, Chris, I'm not even mad anymore. I'm just used to the pain and letdown. I mean, you say that, Brock, but we're all sports fans, though. And no matter how many times you get beat down as a sports fan, and I say this as someone who has been spent a lot of time pretty devoted to the Pirates. I've faded in the last couple of years. Just my interests have gone elsewhere. My time has been spent separately. But you say you're going to cut out from it. You say you're going to back away from it. You say you're going to give up because it doesn't. You say you're not going to get mad anymore. But then your sports teams always find ways to make you mad again. There's no question. Travis Spagnolo says, I wanted it to work out with Pat Narduzzi, but it's clear that it never will. Best roster since 2009, and this is the result. Going in the wrong direction in year 6, this is the best they'll be with Narduzzi. And, I guess at some point, and maybe this bye week will be the time to do it, this off week, at some point we'll have to go back and try and figure out if we overestimated this roster. You know what I mean? Did we overestimate the talent on this roster? And I'll tell you one area where I probably did overestimate, and this was the one area where I guessed. I guessed at something. I guessed the Pitt's offensive line would get better just by the virtue of having experience last year and having guys back and having them playing with experience. Whereas last year, they had a bunch of new starters, guys still getting comfortable on the field, playing in games. And, this year I said, no, this year they're going to, I said there's value in getting game experience. There's value in having all those games played last year, and it's going to pay off with improved play this season. And I overvalued that. I overstated it. And I certainly know I set some expectations high for this team. And if you read, things I wrote, then maybe you set your expectations for the team based on some of the things I wrote, or maybe it influenced you in some way. And if I did, I apologize, because it was clearly off base. It's clearly off base about what this team would do and what they were capable of. And I still think they're capable of more than they've done. I believe they have underachieved with the NC State game and the Boston College game, and even to some extent the Miami game. And we would feel very differently if they had won the NC State and Boston College games, which they should have, and they were sitting here at 5-2 as opposed to 3-4. I think 5-2 would be disappointing because you would have felt like the Miami game was one that got away if it played out the way that it did. Certainly, if you were sitting here at 5-2 after the Miami game playing out the way it did, and then a 42-point blowout loss to Notre Dame, you would not feel great about that record. But 5-2 would seem a lot better than 3-4. I don't think there's any question about that. Soccerman793, time to drop Narduzzi. S Max says we only need help on offense, defense, and special teams. That's it, right? That's all it takes. Let's see. Joe Lanzel says he's got a lot of comments here that Joe wants me to read. No run, no discipline, outcoach, drop passes, etc., etc. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, that's that and that's the troubling thing, is that we keep coming back to these same issues, and today they had those issues crop up when they ran into a really talented team, a team that outclassed Pitt, quite frankly, in terms of talent. They really did. Let's see here. K Bell says they can't afford to fire Narduzzi. I assume Heather has a meeting with Pat tomorrow, and they have a come to Jesus meeting about the offensive coordinator. I've said about this before that I don't think it's good practice for an athletic director to tell a head coach to fire assistant coaches. Like, you hire the head coach, you have them on the staff to put together a coaching staff and to get to operate a coaching staff that can run the program. And if ultimately those assistant coaches fail, the head coach has to make the decision to fire them. And if he decides to stick with them and they continue to fail, the product doesn't improve, then the head coach goes on the chopping block for it. You know what I mean? He's accountable for that. The buck stops here type of thing. And so, I don't know how Heather Lyke wants to conduct business. It's my opinion that the athletic director should sit back and say, you do you, buddy. But if this doesn't get better, it's on you. It's your responsibility. And Pat Narduzzi has to realize that. And I mean, I think that's why Sean Watson got fired after the 2018 season. I think that's why, he made moves with guys like Josh Conklin and John Peterson and Kevin Sherman. And I think that's why he would and Tom Sims. And I think that's why he would make a move with Mark Whipple ultimately. Because the product has not improved. It hasn't improved over the past, over the past 20 games. Let's scroll down here. Jason Martell says Joey Yellen obviously struggled, but the offensive coordinator and his teammates didn't do him any favors. He has some tools, but I'm most concerned about his inability to scramble, especially given our horrible running game. Yeah, it's funny because the Miami game, I thought Joey Yellen, he moved around okay. He wasn't going to scramble. He wasn't going to be a running threat. You weren't going to run RPOs with him and have him get out on quarterback draws and things like that. But I thought he moved around in the pocket well and kept plays alive and was able to make plays downfield. Notre Dame rushed the passer a lot more effectively than Miami did. And I didn't think that was going to be the case. I didn't think that Notre Dame would be more of a challenge than Miami up front. I mean, I tend to think of Miami as having a really athletic front seven, but Pitt, I thought, blocked them relatively well compared to how they handled Notre Dame, and they didn't handle Notre Dame well at all. I mean, it was pretty brutal. And that comes back to the offensive line. It comes back to the blocking, but Joey Yellen didn't play well either. And I thought he played really well at Miami. I thought not really well, but I thought he was better than I expected. And I was encouraged to see what he would do sort of for a follow-up, how he would improve from his first start to his second start at Pitt. And he didn't. I mean, he wasn't any better. And like who was it that said it? I forget who made this comment. Like Jason Martell said, yeah, he didn't get help from his teammates. I don't know about the offensive coordinator and the play calling there. But yeah, he didn't play well. And quite frankly, I'm surprised that they waited until 3 interceptions to pull him. I'm surprised he didn't go out after the second interception. And then, of course, he throws 1 interception. And then the very first play of the next drive, he throws another interception, his third. And then that was finally it. I'm surprised that he came out and had the opportunity to throw that third interception. I'm surprised that he didn't go to Davis Bevel or Nick Patty sooner than that. Let's see. Brock Madonic, any coaches out the door this week? Like I said, I mean, I don't know. I mean, Pat Narduzzi has never fired anyone mid-season, but it's an interesting time right now. In year 6, you're 3-4 with a 4-game losing streak and an offense that is just not very good and hasn't been for the last 20 games. And again, you've got an off week. If there was a time to do, if you were going to do it and you were looking for the right time, I mean, this potentially would be it. Pittsburgh Sports All the Time. If Kenny isn't able to play next week, what quarterback do you start? Fortunately for Pitt, they have an off week, so they can give Kenny Pickett 2 more weeks to try and heal that ankle. He had a boot. He was at Heinz Field today. He had a boot on his left leg. I don't know. Panther-Lair said he definitely thinks he'll be back this season. It might be a stretch to get him back for the Florida State game in 2 weeks. If Pickett can't go against Florida State, I don't know. I guess you have an open competition in practice. Heck, maybe you go with Nick Patty. Or they stick with Joey Yellen. I don't understand the deal with Davis Bevel. And somebody asked about that. Jason Martell, did something happen with Bevel? He only played 1 series. I don't get it. If you're looking at him as a potential quarterback of the future, I'm not sure why you don't leave him out there for longer than 1 drive in a meaningless game. Garbage time game. It's basically garbage time for the entire second half. I don't know why you don't get him more opportunities out there to find out what he can do and get him more comfortable on the field. He's not going to make any improvements watching from the sidelines. And here you had an opportunity to actually get him on the field and see if he can make improvements in those situations and give you something to build on and something to work with. What do I do? What quarterback do I start at Florida State in 2 weeks? I don't know. I'd have to see how they practice. You know what I mean? I really would, and it would have to be based on that. Let's see. Scroll down through the comments here. Josh Newark says, did anyone see Mark Whipple chewing out Joey Yellen almost immediately? Panther-Lair Chewing out Andre Powell right after the blocked punt. It looked like a lot of bickering on the sideline. Add Paris Ford getting benched. Boy, Panther-Lair, on the last point about Paris Ford, he played, I think, 2 drives in the third quarter, and that was it. And it was gone for the rest of the game. Didn't play again. And I tried to keep an eye on him on the sidelines, but after I noticed that he hadn't been in for about 2 drives. Panther-Lair went out of his way after the game. He was asked about Paris Ford. He went out of his way after the game to say that it wasn't about pulling him or benching him or anything like that. It was just they wanted to get time for Brandon Hill. They wanted to get him on the field. I don't know what to make of that situation. I think there are a lot of powder kegs on this team, and that's not a reflection or a comment on anyone's personality. I think there are there's a lot of potential for this thing to blow up. I think there are a lot of ways this could all blow up with this team, because that's what happens when you really kind of go down the tubes like they have so far with this 4-game losing streak. When you keep losing, guys get frustrated. They're competitors. They're going to get frustrated. It's understandable, and it's kind of expected. Guys are going to get frustrated. It's how they handle it. It's how they bounce back. It's how they respond. But not everybody's going to respond in a way that's productive. And managing that over the next 2 weeks is going to be pretty important for the coaches. And it's going to be tricky. Let's scroll down here. Soccer Man 793, looking at the remaining schedule, Virginia Tech looked terrible against Wake Forest, and Florida State is a dumpster fire, but would Pitt be favored in either of those? I don't know. I don't know what Pitt will be favored in. I think, I would believe that they could play with Florida State, Georgia Tech and Virginia Tech. I would believe that they could. But at this point, we all know that you can't take anything for granted. I thought I believed they could play with NC State and Boston College and Miami. I believed they could at least have a close game with Notre Dame because that's what they've historically done. Entering this game in the last 6 games, Pitt was 4-1-1 against the spread when facing Notre Dame. They're only 1-5 overall, but 4-1-1 against the spread. So they tended to cover. They tended to make these games closer than you would have expected. Well, they didn't tonight. And so that makes me think that you really can't take anything for granted. Not Florida State, not Georgia Tech, not Virginia Tech, and then Clemson. We'll have to see. Josh Newark says, I'm worried that Narduzzi legitimately lost this team if he even had it already. Look, I mean, these are the kind of things that we're going to talk about when a team falls into a losing streak. And we've seen it before. I've seen it before. We talk about losing the team and coaches losing the team and whether guys, quit on the team or give up on the coach or that kind of thing. And I think there's a real concern of that. And again, that's not a reflection on these specific players or this specific coaching staff, but I think it's a real concern of it because when you lose 4 in a row, I mean, you guys, you know how you feel as a fan, right? You guys who are out there on this podcast, we're all sitting here. It's almost 10 o'clock at night on a Saturday night, and we're sitting here talking about Pitt, and you know the frustration you feel at a 4-game losing streak. You know how you feel after a 42-point loss. But I can almost assure you that the guys on that team, those players, feel even worse than you do. And they felt worse after NC State, and they felt worse after Boston College, and they felt worse after Miami, and now they feel worse after this game than you do. Eventually, that's going to wear you down. And just like some fans are saying, I don't even want to pay attention anymore. You know what I mean? This has it's worn me down. I'm done with this. I'm not even mad. Like somebody said, I'm not even mad. I'm just, you feel that way. It's not hard to imagine players falling into that trap as well. And, again, that's on the coaching staff to find a way to hold those guys together. Keep the team together and find a way to rally and come out and fight again. Fight again the next day. And the next day. And the next day. I don't know. Let's see what else we got here. Travis Spagnolo says, Chris, I know you're a serial glass, not half full or empty type of guy, but I don't know how this team finishes above 500. I mean, to get above 500, right? They're 3-4 right now. Right? So they would have to get above 500, they have to go 3-2, which means they would have to beat Florida State, Virginia Tech. Oh, wait. No, they're 3-4. So they would have to go 3-1, right? Yeah, 3-1. So they have to beat Florida State, Virginia Tech, and Georgia Tech, and then lose to Clemson to finish at 6-5. And look, there's no... just to come back to one of our original points about this team and this season and the expectations for 2020, we're talking about how they can find a best case scenario to get to 6-5. When we talked about this team realistically competing for 8-9 wins, how 7 would be a disappointment. Now we're talking that they would have to lay it on the line and go on quite a run to be able to get to 6 wins. This season. And I made this point earlier. They could go on a run, win a bunch of games, and this season will still be a disappointment because of the NC State and Boston College games. Those games, they could go on a run and finish 7-4, and it would be incredible. Incredible finish to the season. This team rallied. I can't believe how they bounced back from a horrible start and a 4-game loss or a 4-game losing streak and a 3-4 record, and they rallied back and finished 7-4. It's an incredible story. But there would still be a lingering disappointment from the fact that they lost those games because that would be the difference between 7-4 and 9-2. And now we're talking about just how they can scrape and claw to get their way back to 6 wins. This is a disappointing season. It's absolutely a disappointing season. Let me see here. I think we had another super chatter jumping in here. Royce Beacom, there he is. Royce, thank you for using the super chat. We really appreciate you. You're always here. Future may have a +3 of the future opponents lost, perhaps when they shouldn't have. Royce, man, whoops. Siri thought I was talking to her when I was talking to Royce Beacom here. The future may have a +3 of the future opponents lost, perhaps when they shouldn't have. FSU to Louisville, Virginia Tech to Wake Forest, Georgia Tech to Boston College. Oh, okay. I think I see what Royce is saying. The future may have a positive that these three teams, Florida State, Virginia Tech, and Georgia Tech, have all taken some bad losses, particularly of late. Games that maybe they shouldn't have lost. So I understand what you're saying. And yeah, that's, those are going to be winnable games. Those are not going to be impossible games. Those are games that Pitt potentially could win and maybe even should win. But at this point, at this point, we can't – I don't think we can sit here and say they're going to win anything. I think it's hard to say that this team should win any of these games. I mean, they can, but are you betting on this team to win any of these games? It's hard to. It's hard right now. Josh Grubbs says, was it just me that saw Chase Pine out of position time and again? Yeah, middle linebacker's a problem right now. Middle linebacker is an issue. I don't think there's any question about that. I think Wendell Davis was a loss. I think at the end of the game they had Servassier Dennis working in the middle linebacker position. That was kind of in the fourth quarter when they had their second team defense out there. So maybe Dennis could potentially play at that spot. But yeah, I don't think Chase Pine has been great this season. I think he has. I don't think he's been a great fill-in for Wendell Davis after Wendell Davis got hurt, and that's a problem because that position, it's important, and it really hasn't been up to snuff. Now I don't know what Wendell Davis would have done. I don't know if how he would have played if he had stayed healthy, but it's not good, Let's see what other comments and questions we have here. Tom Slivka jumping in as a super chatter. Tom, thank you so much. We appreciate that. You can see that right down under the chat screen. There's the emoji. If the opportunity to say something, there's an emoji, and then the super chat button where you can show your support for Panther-Lair.com. You can make a comment and support the podcast, and we appreciate that for sure. We will definitely get your comments and questions. You join the super chat section. Scrolling through here, get a few more questions and comments and reactions in. Eric Bruno, where's your comment? There it is. Chris, it's really concerning that after Kenny leaves, what Pitt is going to look like next year. Is the current crop of quarterbacks a sign of more darker times, even if Pat and company are fired? I was bullish on these quarterbacks. You know what I mean? Of Joey Yellen and Davis Bevel. Nick Patty to some extent, Nate Yarnell for next season. I was bullish on these guys and their potential and how they looked, but yeah, what we've seen of them thus far, and I like I say, I thought Yellen looked good at Miami, but he was not good against Notre Dame. Bevel can't get a shot. I think we kind of know who Patty is, and I'm not sure if he can move, he can run, but I'm not sure if he's a guy who can really... I'm not sure if he's a guy who can. I know he led them to a victory over Delaware last year, but I'm not sure he's going to take over and win you the Coastal. But I can't rule him out. He just, I don't know. I don't know if he's that guy or not. So, we'll see if Kenny Pickett has to miss more time. We'll see how Bevel or Yellen or Patty develop in the playing time that they get. But yeah, it's a little concerning to see where those guys are right now, and you have to hope that they're improving or see what they're able to do with continued practice time. Pittsburgh Sports All the Time says, is it fair to say that if they stay, this is the most important game coming up against Florida State ever for this coaching staff? It's hard, man, because I was saying that the Boston College game was one of the most important games of the season, and then the Miami game, I think so. Look, gun to my head, I don't think Pat Narduzzi is going to get fired. If they continue to lose, I get less and less confident about that. Does it make sense? I get less and less certain about what could happen this offseason. I think I've said all along that I think in the era of the year of COVID, where people are getting laid off and furloughed and losing jobs because athletic departments and universities are losing revenue, I think it's hard to make a case to go out and pay somebody to go away. I mean, pay a buyout or pay the rest of their contract to go away and then pay a brand new coach even more money to come in here. I think that's a hard sell this year. I think that would be tough to do. However, I think it becomes less difficult when the losing continues. And if they lose to Florida State, or if they lose a couple more games, they end up 5-6 or 4-7 or 3-8. I mean, it becomes, I think, more. I don't know if I would say it becomes more palatable or more pressing or more likely. I just think the possibility probably increases that they would make a change if the losing continues. If they can snap out of the losing and finish it 6-5, you could probably stomach another year. But if the losing continues, it gets tough to justify. And you're probably able to make a better case to justify the money that it would cost to make that happen. Anthony Tennyson says, mark it down that they won't win another game as long as Whipple is the offensive coordinator. Okay. Get my pen. Anthony Tennyson, no more W's with Whipple. Got it, Anthony. We'll see. Maybe you're right. I don't know. Let's see here. Get through a few more questions. Closing in on that hour mark. Josh Grubb says the play calling gets a lot of hate, but what about the playbook? It seems there aren't many plays and receivers don't get open, which has to be partly scheme. See, I'm not entirely sure about that, Josh, because I actually think there are some good plays in this playbook. I think they did a good job getting guys open against Boston College, getting guys open against Miami. This Notre Dame game, it didn't go as well. I think Yellen didn't look as good as he did against Miami, and so you didn't see the passes going to the open receivers. I think Mark Whipple can design a passing offense. I'm just growing more and more convinced and concerned about his run game and where there might be issues there. That we talk about the blocking and the offensive linemen maybe aren't good enough or they haven't been coached well enough. Well, maybe there are structural issues in the way this run game is designed, and that's why it's so miserable. I think they ran a few draw handoffs that actually were more successful than any of the powers and things like that they tried to do. And there's probably a million reasons, or at least 11 reasons, why every play breaks down. But I think you look at how just sort of consistently the run game just fails play after play after play. And I think there are issues there with the play design. There must be. You know what I mean? There must be a lot of issues all over the place with the run game. But I think in terms of the pass, I think Mark Whipple can design a good pass offense and call a good pass offense. But, doesn't do a lot of good if your quarterback is under pressure or your quarterback's not feeling comfortable or your quarterback can't make the throws. That can be a trouble. That can be a problem as well. Let's see here. Scroll through. See what else we got. Let's see if we have any other questions or comments to get to here. Derek Juzak says, safe to say Dave Borbely is likely gone at this point. I mean, he would be one that you would have a question about. I think if you're going to circle, obviously a lot of positions have underperformed this season. I think a lot of positions have fallen short of the expectations this season. I think a lot of positions have been underwhelming and disappointments this season. But I think if you're going to circle a few overall, you're looking at an offensive coordinator and offensive line coach, that those guys have to they need to do a better job. Their positions and their position groups and their units need to perform better than they have. And they're not, because they're not doing so hot. The offensive line has been a problem. Josh Newark says Mark Cuban should buy Pitt instead of the O. Yes. He should buy Pitt. He should buy the university. That's a great call. Let's see here. Freedom 31 says many ACC schools are better academically. Yeah, I'm not sure what that is in response to. I think another comment there that I might have missed. But, Pitt is pretty good academically in the ACC. They might not be Virginia or Duke, but they're pretty good there. I think they can keep keep pace with most of those schools. I don't think they get beat by too many schools for academics, at least if, in terms of recruiting and that kind of thing. Yeah, Derek Juzak, first comment, and Chris sees it. I did see your comment. You didn't even do the super chat, man. I definitely would have gotten to your comment if you super chatted it. But, I just happened. I was scrolling through. I saw your comment, so I jumped right on it. Travis Spagnolo, Chris, here's a question. In your opinion, where would the Pitt program have gotten on the trajectory that Paul Chryst had them going, assuming he didn't leave? That's been talked about this week, actually. There have been some conversations on the message boards about Paul Chryst and what he would have done at Pitt, how he would have done if he didn't leave to go to Wisconsin. And I don't know. I go back and forth. I think people have concerns about where the defense was with Paul Chryst, and I think those concerns are valid. I don't think the defense was necessarily going to get any better with Paul Chryst. I don't think his defensive recruiting was going to, improve. I think that, I think there are questions about his quarterback recruiting as well. Alex Hornibrook ended up having a pretty decent career at Wisconsin, transferred to Florida State, and it didn't really work out there when he went as a grad transfer. But, Paul Chryst didn't really leave the cupboard stacked in terms of quarterbacks. You know what I mean? Like, Pat Narduzzi inherited Chad Wojcik and Adam Burtke and immediately went and got a grad transfer quarterback in Nathan Peterman. And then had to pull in Ben DiNucci as sort of a fill-in when Alex Hornibrook followed Chryst to Wisconsin. But I don't think Chryst would have had the quarterback success here that he had at Wisconsin. Now, he built he recruited a great offensive line, some really good offensive linemen. There's no question about that. If he would have been able to keep that up, he would have had a chance to have success. I don't know if his defense ever would have really improved all that much, and I'm not sure if he could have gotten over the quarterback issue, because I don't think he would have ended up recruiting quarterbacks as well here as he ultimately did at Wisconsin. Let's see. Get to a couple more here. Jason Martell says there's no shame or surprise in losing to Notre Dame. It's the way they're losing. Sloppy play, poor execution, discombobulated. Nice use of discombobulated right there, Jason. Sadly, the offense shows no sign of improvement, no progress, no glimpses of development. And that's the concerning thing. That's the big problem, Jason. I think you hit the nail on the head, is that you're seeing the same problems that you've seen all season. It's the same problems that you saw last season. And the fact that those issues haven't improved, the fact that those issues haven't kind of, been dealt with, it's concerning, very much concerning. And that is a reflection on the coaching staff. Ultimately it is. I mean, you could say that, well, these players just don't listen. They just can't figure it out. They just can't stop taking dumb penalties. They can't stop making dumb mistakes. They can't stop dropping passes and this kind of thing. And that's true, but ultimately it reflects back on the coaches, and they're the ones who have to have the accountability for it. And, at a certain point, it all adds up on you, at a certain point, it all adds up. All right, we'll take the this will be the last one here. Oh wait, no, two more. Pittsburgh sports all the time. The thing that really got me angry is what the heck was the play calling at the end of the half, and really all season. At the end of the first half, I don't understand. Pitt lays up. They have a minute 29. They get the ball back. They have all 3 timeouts. They don't even try. They run the ball 3 times and throw a screen. And then the punt gets blocked and gets taken back for a touchdown. But to not even try, Pat Narduzzi said they didn't think they should be throwing the ball all over the place. They had a backup quarterback out there. Well, if he's not ready to do that, you need to find a different guy who is ready, that you do trust to be in a 2-minute situation there. They didn't even try. That was troubling. All right, Freedom 31, last question here, and it ties into a few questions that have been asked. He said, how's recruiting looking? Look, I mean, Pitt's 2021 recruiting class is pretty good. I think it's really good, actually. I think it follows the 2020 recruiting class that I've said a few times I believe is Pat Narduzzi's best. I think the 2019 recruiting class has looked better and better over time as more of those guys have gotten onto the field. So, I mean, I think you have this run, assuming this 2021 class stays together and signs with Pitt and everything, you've got this run of 3 pretty good recruiting classes. I think recruiting has improved in the last few years under this coaching staff. It takes a while, though, to get those guys on the field, but I think it has improved. How are those kids recruiting or reacting to this losing streak? I mean, I'm sure they're all disappointed. It seems like everybody's standing pat, though. It's a unique recruiting situation with an ongoing dead period. These kids aren't going to be able to visit any schools at all before they sign in December. We'll see how many of them do sign and how many of them decide to bail on their, or not bail, but hold off and wait to sign in February. But everybody still seems to be in the class. Now, somebody asked the question of, what would happen if you change coaches? What happens there? Are you concerned? What happens in recruiting then? Well, then it starts to get crazy. It starts to get wild. Kids start to reconsider their decisions. They wait for a new coach to get hired. I think it starts to get a little interesting it starts to get a lot interesting. I get distracted by a next question. I always do that. I'm reading the next questions, and I should just pay attention to what I'm talking about. But, I mean, if you change coaches, then it gets hard to hold on to a recruiting class. And you can hold on to a lot of guys. You're probably not going to hold on to all of them. And if you have a real mess like Pitt had after the 2010 season, you lose almost all of them. That's down the road, though. I don't think Pat Narduzzi's getting fired mid-season. I think it would take some extreme results for him to get fired after the season. He needs to start winning games, though, and put this out of the conversation altogether. And get himself back here in 2021. And I still think that it's going to be tough for Pitt to justify making a change after this season. But again, if you keep losing, you give them justification to make a move. And so it's on Pat Narduzzi. He has to win. You know what I mean? That's what his job is. His job is winning football games. All right, thanks so much for everybody who came out for the live stream tonight. We'll do this after every game. I mean, we'll get together and talk about Pitt, and I'll let you guys vent and rant, and we'll just talk about what happened. So we'll do it again in 2 weeks after the Florida State game. We'll be probably an hour or so after the game ends. We'll fire it up. I'll let you know, and we'll get that all set up and plan it in advance. But thanks to everybody who came out for the live stream. If you want to be part of this, it's youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Is the channel. You can subscribe to the Panther-Lair.com YouTube channel, and then you can get notifications whenever we go live. So make sure you do that. If you're here on the page, we appreciate everybody liking the video. That's awesome. Make sure you go and subscribe to the Panther-Lair.com YouTube channel, though, and then you'll know when we go live. You'll know what's going on. Thanks to all the super chatters tonight. Really appreciate that. And just appreciate everybody coming out and talking Pitt sports. We'll, of course, have our regular weekly live stream on Tuesday night at 8:30 right here on YouTube. And we'll release that as a podcast. Just stay tuned to Panther-Lair.com throughout the week, though. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. We'll have something to talk about. We've got plenty to talk about, for sure. So make sure you check out the website and come back on Tuesday night. We'll have another conversation about Pitt after a few days after the game, after we've let it all sink in. So hope you had a great Saturday, other than the game, of course. Hope you have a great rest of the weekend, and we will talk to you Tuesday night. Thanks a lot.